Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for this Part B Anesthesiology Common Rejections and Denials webinar. This webinar is designed for those who submit claims on the CMS 1500 claim form or the 837P electronic claim. My name is Mary Mucko. I'm a specialist on the Provider Outreach and Education team at WPS Government Health Administrators, also known as WPS GHA. I will be your host this morning, and assisting me is my friend and colleague, Ellen Barra. We include this disclaimer in all our education, and we do so to remind learners that although we made every effort to provide current information, the information is subject to change. It is on the CMS website where you will find the Medicare rules that determine final coverage. These laws, regulations, and rulings will always prevail. We will provide responses to questions based on the facts given. And just as a reminder, CMS does prohibit recording of this presentation for profit-making purposes. We are recording this webinar today, and it will be posted to our Encore Presentations webpage and to our YouTube channel. So here is the advertisement for our presentation today, and you might have noticed that it's really going to focus on data. We ask all of our learners to carefully read these advertisements so that you understand the specific topics we will cover. For example, for this webinar today, I advertised that I would cover common rejections and denials specific to Part B, Specialty 05 providers. That's anesthesia providers. Those that submit claims on the CMS 1500 form or the 837P professional electronic claim. Now, the reason for this education is really to comply with CMS instructions, and those are out in their internet-only manual. The publication is 100-09. That's the Medicare Contractor, Beneficiary, and Provider Communications Manual, specifically Section 20.3.4, titled Analysis of Claim Submission Errors. And in that section of CMS's manual, they tell the contractors, like WPS-GHA, that we need to educate on claim submission errors that are those that result in rejected, denied, or incorrectly paid claims. It also states that MACs shall maintain a provider data analysis program that produces a monthly list of the most frequent collective claim submission errors for all providers in their jurisdiction. So we are being requested by CMS to provide education on those most common rejections and denials. And today during this presentation, I will reveal those to you, and I'll also, provide information on how you can fix and avoid both of these. I'll finish up with a lot of resources that you can come back to avoid these common rejections and denials. Then we will have some time for questions, and I'll let you know how you can submit follow-up questions for a period of 1 week following our event. So let's get started. To fully understand rejections and denials, it really is important that you recognize the path that a claim takes, or what we like to call the life of a claim. This is really a simplified graphic on how a claim gets into our system. The service is rendered, a claim is submitted. Sometimes the claim system rejects the claim or the batch. And when this occurs, reports are generated, a 277 or 999 report. Let's talk about that a little bit. Now, most providers submit claims electronically. Very few qualify for a waiver under a law that prohibits payment of any service or supply that a provider did not bill to Medicare electronically. To confirm claim receipt, providers should use the 999 report, and providers would use the 277 report that provides a little bit more specific information. Now, our Electronic Data Interchange, or EDI staff, provides helpful information in the Medicare 276-277 Companion Guide, and this guide was prepared to help clarify and further define the data content requirements for an electronic claim. So based on these reports then, you will know if the batch is rejected or if you need to correct and resubmit. Here is a simplified graphic that shows what happens to a claim that Medicare deems as unprocessable. The service is rendered, the claim is submitted, but something's not right, and that information will print out on the remittance advice. So in order to understand a rejection versus a denial, I prepared this slide because these are really two very, very different things. I think people, even within WPS GHA, sometimes use these words interchangeably, and we really should not be doing that. A rejection is very different than a denial. A rejection is also called unprocessable. It's returned on the front end during claims processing. Uh, a rejected claim or unprocessable claim is deemed that because something's missing, is illogical, it's not correct, it's incorrect. There are no appeal rights for rejected claims. You need to fix it and resubmit it. When you receive your remittance advice or your RA, there will be a remittance advice remark code of MA130 and a group code of CO16 on that remittance advice if the claim is unprocessable. The MA130 tells you that your claim includes complete or invalid information and there are no appeal rights, and that CO16 group code tells you that it's a contractual obligation. You can't bill the patient for that. The patient's not liable. A denial, on the other hand, is or occurs when the service is actually adjudicated, but it's denied because it doesn't meet Medicare's payment criteria. This could be based on law or what we call statutory requirements. It may not meet medical necessity. Medical necessity also includes frequency guidelines, or maybe there is an eligibility issue, so the claim is denied. It could be on the provider side, or it could be that the beneficiary is not eligible for the service. For a denied claim on the remittance advice, you will find an MA01 remittance advice remark code on most claims. There are very, very few exceptions where you will not see that MA01, and basically what that does, that particular remittance advice remark codes, is it informs you that you have the right to an appeal. And for the services that are denied, patient liability is determined. So here then is a graphic that shows the path for a processed claim. The service is rendered, a claim is submitted to Medicare. Most of the claims are submitted electronically. And there is a payment made or a denial. And of course, the remittance advice would indicate such. I want to talk a little bit about the importance of that remittance advice. Sometimes we call it a remittance notice, or RA for short. As I mentioned, most providers do receive an electronic remittance advice or an ERA, as opposed to a standard paper remittance or SPR. Now, depending on how the claim processed, it may include information about adjustments made to the claim or denials. It could also include information about something that's missing, and sometimes it even provides notice about refunds and offsets. The ERA also provides payment information about transfer of funds and payment processing from a health plan to a healthcare provider's bank. Codes on the remittance advice provide information about the claim. There's claim adjustment reason codes. We call those CARCs, and these explain why a claim paid differently than it was billed. And remittance advice remark codes, or RARCs, will provide more details about an adjustment that's described by a claim adjustment reason code. In addition to these codes, there's another type of code that appears on the remittance advice. It's called a group code, and these convey the financial responsibility for any unpaid portion of a claim balance. A CO stands for contractual obligation, and this means that the provider is liable. A PR means the patient is financially responsible. Now, you can find code lists on the Washington Publishing Company's website. This is a company that maintains all of those codes for CMS. Now, I do want to add that WPSGHA understands that some of those codes uh, appear to be a bit cryptic. Some of them may even appear out of date. And when I say that, I mean by example that some of those code messages could include an outdated acronym, for example. Now, for rejections or denials, there are potential actions that you will need to choose from in order to fix or correct the rejected claim or the rejected service or denied service. Now, for an unprocessable or a rejected claim, you're going to need to fix the error and resubmit the claim to Medicare. If the claim or claim line denied, there could be multiple actions that you could choose from for an unprocessable claim. You may be able to simply resubmit the service. Um, for some situations, you may be able to use clerical error reopening to correct a clerical error for those claims that are processed. CMS defines clerical errors as human or mechanical errors. I'll talk more about the clerical error reopening or CER process a bit later in this presentation. Another action to consider is an appeal. The remittance notice or the remittance advice is going to provide those appeal rights, and I'll talk about appeals a little bit later also. Now, those registered users of the WPS transactional portal can also use the transactional portal to render a clerical error reopening or request an appeal. And this is just one of many self-service tools that Medicare offers or WPS offers. And really the use of these self-service tools do offer the most efficiencies. We do have a portal user manual that provides both illustrations and step-by-step instructions on how to use those portal features. I wanted to provide a couple more resources for you specific to the remittance advice. So I have linked to those resources here on this slide. Next, I want to talk about whether you need to correct or appeal the MAC's decision to pay or deny a claim. I talked a bit earlier about the clerical error reopening process. I told you that I'd provide more details. This is a process that's used to correct those human or mechanical errors. They're limited to errors in form and content. They do not include, or these types of errors do not include failure to bill for certain items and service. The final bullet on this slide links to a very helpful resource out on our website, and this provides examples of situations that can and cannot be processed as a clerical error reopening. It also explains how to request one. You can request a clerical error reopening via telephone or fax, or you can use the portal for self-service. And again, that portal user manual that I talked about does provide the instructions for this process. Examples of acceptable clerical error submissions are mathematical or computational mistakes, transposed procedure or diagnostic codes, inaccurate data entry, misapplication of a fee schedule, or computer errors. If you're looking for examples of what cannot be rendered as a clerical error reopening, I would suggest that you look at that resource listed here on this slide. I want to talk about appeals also, and this would be applicable for claim denials. Most claim denials offer you the appeal process. Most often you can request this, and the purpose of the appeals process is really to ensure the correct adjudication of claims. And physicians, suppliers, and beneficiaries have the right to appeal claim determinations that are made by the MACs. There are 5 levels in the Medicare appeals processes. The MACs, though, render only the first level, called the redetermination. Now, a beneficiary or their representative can request an appeal on any service that's processed for them. That is, of course, if there's appeal rights that apply. Providers and suppliers may appeal services for which they accepted assignment. However, for unassigned claims, a provider and supplier can act as the beneficiary's representative, but the beneficiary would need to sign an authorization statement. CMS does offer a form. That appointment of representative is or can be made by use of Form CMS 1696. Providers and suppliers can also request a redetermination on a non-assigned claim if Medicare denied the service is not medically reasonable and necessary, or if the provider or supplier billed in excess of the limiting charge. And in that case, the provider or supplier would be expected to refund any fees that were collected from the beneficiary. Time frames do apply to each level of appeal when submitting it. And additionally, there is a minimum amount in controversy that applies to levels 3 and level 5. You can combine like denials or more than one claim in order to reach that threshold, which we refer to as the amount in controversy. Here are a couple of resources for appeals. The first one is a resource that appeals on our website that tells you or explains how to appeal a claim determination. And the second one is one of my personal favorites that I like to refer to when I talk about appeals. And it's actually a flow chart. CMS does update this annually, so of course if you're looking online at this flow chart near the end of the year or at the very beginning of a new year, you're going to want to make certain that CMS has already updated, because it takes a little bit of time to do that. And the reason is because of course those 5 levels remain the same. The time frame for rendering the appeal or requesting the appeal remains the same, and for rendering the appeal, that one remains the same as well, but sometimes those amounts in controversy change at the beginning of the new year. So that's why CMS needs to update this process flowchart. All right, in my advertisement, I told you that I would talk about and explain common rejections and denials. And the next portion of this presentation actually includes a discussion of data that I used to provide most common rejections and denials for specialty 05 providers. The data that I'm sharing today is specific to specialty 05 submitted claims for jurisdiction 5 and jurisdiction 8. Those are the WPS GHA MAC jurisdictions. Jurisdiction 5 includes Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, and Nebraska Part B providers, and Jurisdiction 8 includes Indiana and Michigan Part B providers. While the dashboard does allow us to drill down by a specific state or states, and even counties, I pull data for our entire jurisdiction. And for those of you that might be wondering what Specialty 05 is, it is a 2-digit code that's assigned to WPS GHA providers when they enroll. And during enrollment, providers self-designate a specialty, and a provider can designate a secondary specialty, but it is only that primary specialty, the one designated by the provider when they enroll or the applicant, that is used during the initial claims processing. Now, there's some situations where a provider may request an appeal and may stipulate a secondary specialty so Medicare can consider payment, but it is only the primary specialty, the one designated, that we use during initial claim processing. Specialty code 05 is anesthesiology, and I pulled data for claim submission dates April 1, 2023 through March 31 of 2024. This data was last refreshed on April 10th of this year, and what that means is that Any claims submitted by an anesthesiologist in jurisdiction 5 and 8 after April 10 is not included in the data that I pulled to share with you during this webinar today. So let's take a look at those common rejections by reasons. And again, this is pulled directly from the data. We call it our claims denial dashboard or claims dashboard. It's prepared for provider outreach and education staff like Ellen and me by a team of folks that are in our health informatics and data unit. That unit is referred to internally here as Insight. They pull the data for us when we need to analyze data for top rejections and denials, so we can provide education such as this to you, just as that internet-only manual instructs. So the top or most common rejections by reason are listed here on the next couple of slides. The numbers that you see following the reasons is the number of claim rejections, or the number of rejections rather. So claim lacks information needed for adjudication. Here's one where you're going to need to look at that remittance advice or look at the claim details out on our transactional portal in order to determine what was missing. What was it that wasn't presented and needed for adjudication when that claim was submitted to Medicare. Now, sometimes there will be more than one reason code that you can look at that will kind of help you narrow down what it is you missed. You know, for this kind of denial or rejection, rather, there I went and said the wrong thing. It is a rejection that I'm talking about. You know, you're going to want to look over the claim and make certain that everything that's required on that claim was indeed submitted. I'll show you a tool later that will help you track what is required on a claim versus what is situational. The next common rejection is denied. It says denied, and here's one of those situations that I mentioned to you that sometimes these reject codes or these reason and remark codes, they're a little bit wonky. This one says denied, but what we're talking about here is actually a rejection. This claim is never really processed because the rendering physician number is invalid or missing, and you'll need to submit a new claim. 1,290 rejections there. What you're going to need to do there is look at what was submitted on the claim. Was it invalid? Was something transposed? Was it missing? You're going to need to add that information or correct that information and submit a new claim. The next rejection is that the authorization number is missing, invalid, or does not apply. And this is one of those situations where Medicare told you, or Medicare educates the provider, that you need to include an authorization number. Maybe it was included, it was invalid. Maybe it just simply did not apply. For this particular rejection, you would want to refer to information that WPS has published about reporting those authorization numbers. And what we're talking about here are those pre-authorization numbers that you need to include on your claim. What I'm showing you here is our WPS GHA YouTube channel, and I've included that link to this channel in the resources on your claim. But you can see that there are a number of recordings available that explain coverage for these types of service and the prior authorization process. So for this type of rejection, what I would do would be to look here for that additional detailed information to help you avoid these in the future. Claim must be submitted to RRB. The RRB is an acronym that does actually print out on the remittance advice. RRB stands for Railroad Retirement Board. That means that this beneficiary is a railroad retiree. Medicare claims for railroad retirees are to be sent to Palmetto GBA. They have the contract to process those claims. 446 claims rejected. What you need to do is submit a claim to Palmetto GBA for that particular patient. The next rejection, although the remittance advice code states denied, it's a rejection, is invalid or missing modifier. On the WPS GHA website, We have many, I'm typing here to pull up the website. We have a lot of great resources that pertain to modifiers, including our Monday modifier series that we run. It's a series of webinars we run once a month. We'd love to hear from you if you have suggestions for education on specific modifiers. But in order to find the modifier education we have available on our website, on the WPSGHA website, the topic center that you want to look to is claims. So I'm going to choose claims. I'm going to choose Part B jurisdiction here and accept the licensure agreement. And when you look under claims, you will find this listed here, modifiers. You can look at the modifiers, and this then provides a list of general modifier information. Anesthesia modifiers are listed right here. So if you have questions about the correct or incorrect use of these modifiers, this is where you would look to find that specific information. Okay? A lot of great materials there. And again, if you find that any one of these is particularly problematic in your office or organization, you could suggest to us that we provide specific education on a specific modifier, and then maybe we can include that in our Monday modifier series. All right, let's take a look at the other rejections for other reasons for rejections. Clinic number missing or not entered accurately. Double check what you did put on the claim. If you put something on the claim at all, make certain that it was keyed correctly. The next rejection reason is similar to one I already talked about. And in this case, instead of you having to forward or send a new claim to Palmetto GBA for a railroad retiree, in this case, WPS has already forwarded the claim on your behalf. This has to do with the trading partner agreements we have on file with Medicare. The next common rejection is patient or insured HICN and name do not match. And this is a great example, folks, of what I told you about outdated reasons that might appear, reason and remark codes that appear on your remittance advice. We don't call it the HICN anymore, health insurance claim number. It is now the Medicare beneficiary identifier. For this one, in order to fix it, you're going to need to make certain that that patient name on your claim is exactly as it is shown on your patient's Medicare card. If there's a middle initial, you need to put that on the claim. Next is missing, incomplete, invalid ordering primary identifier. So that means that this information was missing from the claim form. The CMS claim form instructions and one of the tools that I'm going to show you later, the crosswalk, tells you what needs to go where. So if it was missing, you'll need to add it to the claim. If it was incomplete, you'll need to fix it, resubmit it. Same thing, if it was invalid, that ordering primary identifier, you'll need to submit a new claim. Next, service denied, missing information and documentation. For this rejection, I would look to see if there's additional reason or remark codes that might help you pinpoint what it is specifically that was missing. Next is denied. Field 11 of HCFA 1500 must be completed. HCFA is outdated also. Now it's the CMS 1500. But this is the section where you tell Medicare if there is other insurance that is primary to Medicare. You can't leave this field blank. You have to put none if there is no other insurance primary to Medicare. So here then are common rejections by HCPCS and CPT code. If necessary, if you believe that we need education on any of these procedures here, you know, the 00731 is anesthesia for procedure on the upper abdomen. Their 99214 is an evaluation and management code. There's also some nerve block codes here, or paravertebral facet injections. You know, that's part of that prior authorization process. That's why these are appearing here on this list. If you believe we need specific information on why any one of these codes is being rejected, you could suggest that in the survey that you'll be asked to complete. So these then are the common rejections, or the most common rejected HCPCS or CPT codes. You will notice one of these is an NOC code. The 64999 is a not otherwise classified code. We do have a resource out on our website. Let me pull this back over here for a minute. And this was one of the advanced questions too that was submitted. I'm a searcher, not a navigator, so I'm just trying to search here real quickly to find this article right here. Billing and describing not otherwise classified codes. This is a resource on our website, and I've included the link to it in the resource section of your handout. And this explains, in order for us to reimburse for a not otherwise classified service, you need to include certain information on the claim form. And this is where it tells you what you need to put where. Here's some information above here. There are sometimes a situation where a provider uses an NOC code for drugs and biological, and those instructions are also provided here. In this case, it was an anesthesia code that was an NOC code that explained the type of service that was being provided. So these are the data elements that you need to complete when you're submitting an NOC code. And again, the link to this is included in your resources. All right, let's take a look now at common denials. For each of this series of webinars that I'm doing where I'm identifying those common rejections and denials by specialty for Part B, and I'm going right down the specialty list, and I'm at 05 now. That's why I'm talking about anesthesia today. For each of these, one of the most common denials for Medicare claims is a form of a duplicate claim. So you'll see on this particular slide that this came up 3 times, and for the date range that we're talking about for the data that I'm looking at today, 5,430 denials occurred because this was a duplicate charge of a claim now being processed. That question mark 001 with the X's actually is kind of what stands in when we pull our data. If that printed out on your remittance notice, there would be a claim identifier on there. It would tell you the claim that's now being processed. So there's different types of different types of duplicate denials. You can see the third bullet says duplicate charge paid on claim so-and-so. One of the denial reasons is this is a duplicate charge, and of course you can see the money. Now, if you think about all of the providers that are submitting these duplicate claims to Medicare unnecessarily, it really represents, each one of those claims represents a cost. Not only to the provider, but to Medicare as well. In fact, Medicare considers continuous submission of duplicate charges of being a form of abuse. So if in your organization, your clinic, you automatically submit claims the first of every month, if you hadn't received the remittance notice yet for the claim showing that it's been rejected or denied, you shouldn't do that. If you're using a billing service that automatically resubmits on a cycle, that is considered an abuse and it should be stopped. So the second bullet here, separate payment not made for this service. What you're going to want to do here is check for those situations where a service is bundled. In that case, the status code column on the CMS relative value file would indicate it's a bundled service, which means that payment is never going to be unbundled for that item or service. 2,617 denials for that. Physician or supplier not eligible to receive payment, 1,073 denials. What you're going to want to look at here is, well, one thing you could check is to make certain that the provider number on the claim form or provider numbers or identifiers was keyed correctly. This is a situation where you may also want to pick up the phone and call the customer service number so that you can speak to someone in the provider enrollment unit and verify that the information is correct. There might be an error on that date, that eligibility date in the enrollment file. Next, provider not valid for these Medicare services. Similarly, you're going to want to check that provider number on the claim form. make certain that the service is one that is valid, let me back up a little bit. It is a service that should be billed by this particular provider type as well. Next, not covered unless submitted via electronic claim. I talked about this a little bit earlier, that most providers are now submitting claims electronically. There's actually a law that requires such. However, there are some exceptions, but for these particular denials, a paper claim was submitted and it needs to be submitted electronically. Expenses incurred prior to coverage, 792. That's a situation where you're going to want to check eligibility files to make certain that the beneficiary or provider was eligible on the particular data service. There is another one of those nasty duplicate denials, duplicate of a charge already submitted. I started telling you that I'm going down the list and providing this data for all specialties. I provided additional common denials in this program, 3 slides of them as opposed to 2, because there were so many situations for duplicate denials in this case for specialty 05. So I wanted to make certain that you knew, in addition to duplicates, what other common denials are being made for anesthesia claims. Next one, claim must be submitted to EGHP. That stands for Employer Group Health Plan first. And this is a situation there you need to be looking at patient eligibility, because for this particular patient, the employer group health plan needs to pay first. So that's part of the Medicare secondary payer program. We have many resources out on our YouTube channel. We have articles on our website or resources on our website that speak to Medicare secondary payer. So that's what you'd want to look there to avoid those. Here are those other denial reasons or more. Medicare does not pay for this many services in this time period. If you believe Medicare should pay for more, of course, you'd want to exercise your appeal rights, provide documentation why Medicare should pay for more. Next one, not covered when performed, referred, or ordered by this provider. 675. I've included a couple of resources on a slide in your presentation materials that talks about the requirements for referring and ordering providers. So that would be a good resource for you here to avoid this type of denial. Next one is one that's been popping up for a lot of specialties, not just for anesthesiology, but the time limit for submitting your claim has expired. These are one of those exceptions that I talked about where there is no appeal right. However, if you believe you have evidence to support why that claim wasn't submitted timely, you may follow some procedures to request an exception or a waiver of the time limit. And I'll point out to you that resource when I come to it. Basically what you need to do is submit letter or notification to the Medicare claims manager explaining and providing evidence for why that time limit should be waived. Denied service or units of service are exceeded. This pertains to those medically unlikely edits out in the claims processing system. Most of those have appeal rights. So that you can submit your documentation to Medicare as an appeal that shows why Medicare should consider payment for those units of service that exceed the medically unlikely edit. And again, I've included the resource for you in the slide deck. Separate payment not made for this service, do not bill the patient. That one was kind of similar to that bundling one that I talked about earlier. Another situation where you can look to see if services may or may not be unbundled is the National Correct Coding Initiative procedure to procedure edits. Those will tell you when 2 procedures are billed by the same provider the same day during the same encounter for the same patient, whether or not you may append a modifier to the column 2 code in order to have payment unbundled and payment made for both of those services. Again, you would look to those edits out on the CMS website in order to determine if you can consider appending a modifier. Now, just because the edit table shows that you can doesn't mean you do. It means look at your documentation to see if the documentation justifies the appending of a modifier to the claim in order to unbundle service. All right, unbundle payment. Here then are the common denials by code listed for you. You can see some anesthesia on the upper abdomen appearing on this code. There's that NOC code listed again. Ultrasonic guidance procedure is the 942. Again, we have some of the imaging guidance popping up on here. And these codes then are those that are most often denied for the reasons I discussed today. Now, most of them occur due to let me back a minute. Most of these common rejections and denials that I'm talking about today didn't occur due to failure to meet coverage and limitations for coverage. And what I've talked about here, or what I'm talking about here, is policy education. And that's why this webinar is separate from the policy education we provide on anesthesia, because that's not what's causing the top or the most common denials and rejections. So today I'm focusing solely on those rejections and denials based on the data. Now, if you're looking for information about coverage and limitations, then what you will need to do is refer to policy and those coding and billing articles that are the companion documents. We're focusing on data today, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about the fact that we can break down data. We can break down the data by a particular code. So if you're looking for information on why does this code deny most often, we're able to actually break down the data. We can also look at state by reason, county by reason. We can even narrow down to county. Sometimes when I am speaking to a live group, let's say I'm speaking to a group in Traverse City, Michigan, I can actually narrow down the data to look at the county that Traverse City is in. So, you know, it's even more applicable because it pertains to those providers that are there and present that day. We can also look at trending, and that's what CMS requires that we do. So when we use the claims dashboard, we can easily see trending. There's a report built in, and when we mine this data or look at this data, it's really just a click of a button and we can get to this information. For denials, the data trending for those dates that I looked at data or pulled data, this shows that for the 3 months prior to the report, there was 24,581 denials. But for the current 3 months, there's 32,180. So you can see that our denials are trending up, and we don't want to see that happen. Here's an example. The description is services for the same illness by more than one doctor are denied. Current claim count for 3 months is 15. The 3 months prior, there was only one denial, and the difference in the number of claims is 14. So the percentage of change for this specific denial is 1,400%. The last line there just shows, explains a visual that we can see when we look at this report quickly. If there's an increase, there's an arrow up, and we can quickly zoom in on that particular denial and provide education on it. Now, that doesn't mean we're always going to have a live webinar, but there's other types of education that we can consider. You know, do we need to write a resource and put it on our website? Do we need to send a news item out? Do we need to publish a video on our YouTube channel? And so on and so forth. So this is just one example of the trending or the data that we look at and how we decide what it is we're going to provide education on. And of course, we want to know what you think we need to provide education on. So include that in those surveys that you fill out following our events. Very, very important. I know some of you suggested topics you know, when you registered for today's webinar, and I sent out an email explaining this webinar today really is on the data. It's not on documentation. It's not on the policy. the policies we have in place that anesthesiologists use. I'm looking at the data and giving you information about top rejections, top denials, so we can avoid these, and that's what CMS is asking us to do. But some of those suggestions, or not suggestions, but um, items that you thought that we would cover today, and I explained that we're not covering these items. These are great ideas for future events, so I am going to place those suggestions into or onto a spreadsheet that our provider outreach and education staff uses to identify ideas and suggestions for future education. If you didn't already provide that information and you'd like to do so, you can still do that in that survey that we're going to ask you to complete following today's event. So here then are resources, and I want to just kind of go over them quickly. The Internet-only manual publication, Chapter 26, is completing and processing the 1500 claim form. It does speak to items that appear on a paper claim form, but as I told you, most of you are billing electronically because you have to. There's a law that says you have to. So what I'd like to do here, and I told you I was going to share this, is share this crosswalk tool. That's the second bulleted item here. If you are submitting claims claims electronically, you need to know what needs to go on the claim and where it needs to go. The crosswalks from a paper claim form to an electronic claim form. That information is found or is published by our Electronic Data Interchange, or EDI staff. And under our quick links, you can find EDI. I'm going to scroll down. This is EDI for WPS, and down here on the far left is Medicare EDI. I'm going to select it and show you, well, first of all, I want to point out those companion guides I talked about earlier, that 276, 277 report, the 999 report. These guides help you decipher the content of those guides, or the information reports rather. But here, the CMS 1500 to ANSI 837 5010 crosswalk is the crosswalk from a paper claim form to an electronic claim form. Sometimes I get questions like, well, where do I put it on the electronic claim form? This shows you that. So for example, if on the paper claim form, in item 11, it tells you what you need to get rid of that. What you need to place on the paper claim form. This crosswalk tells you if it's item 11 on the paper claim form, here's what you need to put in the data element or loop on the electronic claim. You can see there's quite a few entries there for 11, what you need to include and so on and so forth. And this could be reasons why your claim is rejecting or denying, because something's missing, something's incomplete. I do want to point out to you that there's a status column on this crosswalk, and S means, if you look at the bottom of the page, it's situational. That means the data element must be completed if other conditions exist. If there's an R in this column, that means you need to include that data element in order for us to process your claim. So again, reasons for rejections and denials. Here is a resource on our website, and it's arranged by those reason and remark codes I talked about. Remark code specifically tells you how to correct rejected claims. We talked about the most common rejections earlier today. Similarly, for denials, we list based on categories, so there's a category of duplicate denials, there's a category of bundling denials, there's a category for payer contractor denials, and so on and so forth. So this resource on our website will give you those specific instructions. If your claim denied for this reason, remark, or this is what you need to do. Okay, so good advice as to specific, using that information that prints out on the remittance advice. Our website, of course, has a lot of great resources. If you have situations where your claims are denying due to Medicare secondary payer issues, I've included a link to questions and answers for those denials. We also have our live events webpage, which tells you what's coming. There's actually a calendar out there that shows you events that are coming up. We also have Our encore presentations, I talked about that at the very beginning of my presentation today. That's where you'll find those recordings. Here is a link to our LCD and article lookup. I'm going to pull the website over here again and show you where that is if you're looking for information as it pertains to a WPS LCD and article lookup. And I didn't talk about the policies today because that wasn't the top or the most common reasons for denial. They were other reasons, and those are the ones that we're talking about. But if you are looking for a local coverage determination, information that WPS has published or the companion article, this is a code lookup tool. You can enter a code, a title, or definition here and hit the search button. Excuse me, search button. I'm just going to choose a code that I already had, and it will give you the matches. Do we have a local coverage determination that has those payment limitations and coverage for payment? Limitations and coverage, I should say. Do we have an article that speaks to that specific procedure code? So this is a great tool for you to look at if you are looking for that policy information. I already talked about the YouTube channel. Modifiers, I showed you where you could find information. Here is a link to some great information about that prior authorization process for facet joint interventions. This is information. Oh, that's not the right one here. Trying to find. You know, this is where I told you can find some great information, our YouTube channel, on the prior authorization process. Okay. So that was one of our top rejections. That number wasn't included for that CPT code that requires the prior authorization process, so the claim was rejected. So this is where you can find some specific details on that prior authorization process. All right. Timely filing of claims. This is the resources we prepared to talk about timely filing of claims, which did hit the radar for you know, top rejections or denials, denials it is, for anesthesiology claims. This is where you can get details on sending that letter to the claims manager to ask Medicare to waive the timely filing for that item or service. Freedom of Information Act is where you can request information or more specific data polls specific to your provider number. I wanted you to know that's available. We want to partner with you. That's a link that sorry, I've included in here. I scrolled too far. I've included in here because you may belong to an association for anesthesiology, and you might want a speaker from WPS to come and talk about, you know, either rejections or denials, or maybe even a particular policy. Maybe you want to talk about use of the advanced beneficiary notice of non-coverage, XYZ. We have a form out on this page of our website that you can fill out and request a speaker for future events, whether it be virtual or in person. The Medicare coverage database is where you can go to find it's a searchable depository of all national and local coverage determinations. There is a publication by CMS that tells you how to use that Medicare coverage database. Very, very helpful. It will help you narrow down what you're looking for. Beneficiary Notice Initiative I've included here. If your service is denied as not medically necessary or because of frequency, and that one kind of hit on some of the top denials for anesthesia. This provides for you the advanced beneficiary notice of non-coverage instructions in the form itself. More website resources, bundling, you're going to want to look to those National Correct Coding Initiative edits or to the relative value file to see if it's a bundled, always bundled. You know, you can't, doesn't do you any good to add a modifier because it's bundled. It's always bundled. It's never going to unbundle. Those would be helpful for those situations where there is a bundling denial. Here again is more pre-authorization and pre-claim review initiative information. CMS maintains an anesthesiologist center where all things anesthesia appear in one central location on the CMS website. So I've included that because we did see an evaluation and management service code pop up a couple of times in common rejections and denials. I've included a link to the CMS publication called Evaluation and Management Services Guide. Couple more helpful items for you. The IVR, this is where you can check eligibility. You can look for claim status and details about claims. This is where you use voice or telephone keypad over the phone. This is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week with limited functionality outside of normal business hours. We have an operating guide that explains how to use this great tool. There's also the transactional portal that I talked about earlier today. This is where you can log in, check eligibility, get claim status. You can actually view a claim detail, and the great thing about this particular tool, if you're using it, is that you can look at a claim line denial and click on a button that I believe says more info. And when you hit that button, it's going to give you more information about why that particular claim or claim line denied. If it denied because it didn't meet the coverage limit parameters in a policy, most often it's going to allow you to click right then and there on that policy and open that policy up. So it provides you with even more information about why your claim denied. Like the tool that I just talked about, this is available also 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Instructions are in the portal user manual. For those of you that don't know where to find that, I do want to show you that tool. Bear with me just a moment here. Getting it ready for you. Let's do this. I'll just pull this over. I apologize for that. If you're on the home page or any page of the WPSGHA website and you're looking for that portal user manual that provides those illustrations and it provides those instructions, the link to that is right here underneath the login box on the home page, portal user manual. This provides for you those instructions and illustrations on how to use the features. This does bring us to time for questions, and I apologize. My prepared remarks went long today, but I will let you know how you can submit questions about the information I covered today. And I've just posted this in here. This is that advertisement telling you that I'm going to talk about common rejections and denials, how to fix and avoid, and give you a resource. And I think we can check all those boxes. We've talked about all of those today. All right, and with that, I just want to say that really our greatest compliment is when you, our providers, recommend our education to others. Please consider doing so. This greatly helps us get the word out or reach the greater provider community, and it helps us reach our goal to assure current and effective education for everyone in our jurisdiction. So on behalf of myself and Ellen and our provider outreach and education team, I do want to thank you for your participation. We look forward to your survey comments, and we hope to have you join us for future events. You may now disconnect. Thank you.